Today we are going to discuss a critical issue facing the future of our cities: barriers to mainstreaming nature based solutions in urban India. This work is based on a comprehensive study conducted by Well Labs in collaboration with the Oak Foundation and Rocky Mountain Institute. Think about the last time you experienced a devastating flood in your city, or struggled through a heat wave, or worried about the water scarcity. These aren't isolated incidents anymore. They're becoming our new normal. Here's a striking fact: over half of the world's population now live in cities, and urbanization combined with climate change and ecological degradation is creating unprecedented risk for all of us. But what if I told you that nature itself could be part of the solution? For decades, our response has been heavily dependent on green infrastructure designed for certain return period events. But urban realities have changed. Sewage mixing, solid waste blockages, aging networks, and the speed of urban expansions are significantly reducing the efficiency of these systems. The design capacities no longer match the complexity of today's cities. The question we are asking today is: how do we redesign our cities to be resilient, not just to the risk we planned for, but to the realities we are facing today?
The future is hybrid, where blue, green, and grey infrastructures work together and complement each other. Grey systems will continue to play a role, but they need support from ecological systems that can adapt, recharge, absorb, and restore. One of the most promising pathways toward this hybrid approach is nature based solutions. Simply put, NBS involves using natural and modified ecosystems to provide environmental and socio-economic benefits. As you can see in the graphic, this isn't just about planting trees. It encompasses a wide spectrum of interventions ranging from large scale wetlands and parks to decentralized solutions like permeable pavements, green roofs, biospheres, and rain gardens. The shift moves us from a single lens engineered response to a system based, multifunctional approach to resilience. Why should we prioritize NBS? What's the real value? While a concrete drain serves one purpose, which is moving water, an NBS intervention can do the same and also deliver co benefits. In the diagram, you can observe multiple NBS interventions that are integrated into stormwater management strategies, which are designed to delay, store, and release stormwater effectively. These NBS interventions also provide benefits that are extensive and interconnected. For instance, they regulate temperature and make our cities cooler during heat waves. They sequester carbon. They create recreational spaces that improve our quality of life. They recharge groundwater, which is crucial for cities facing water scarcity. They also improve air and soil quality, protect habitats, and increase biodiversities. So, if the benefits are so evident and the potential is so high, why aren't we seeing these solutions everywhere? While there are pockets of success, like Spun Cities initiatives in Chennai or biodiversity parks in Delhi, but financial, technical, institutional, and social barriers continue to hinder large scale NBS adoption. Our study dwells into these barriers to understand why NBS remains a pilot concept rather than a standard planning practice in India. Before we look at the specific barriers, we want to briefly explain how we arrived at these conclusions. We employed a four-step methodology, first being literature review. We scanned global and local databases and used thematic analysis to categorize barriers across financial, technical, and social dimensions, learning from both Indian and international contexts. Second, policy analysis. We examined across national, state, and city policies, action plans, laws, regulations, and acts to assess where NBS can integrate into current frameworks. Third, key informant interviews. We conducted with 30 diverse stakeholders such as government officials, people from real estate, academicians, CSOs, and implementers to understand the on ground challenges. Multi stakeholder workshop, which is the last one. In May 2025, we co organized a workshop in Bengaluru with RMI and Oak Foundation. We brought together 45 experts and utilized systems mapping and the World Cafe method to collaboratively validate these barriers and co create the roadmap we are presenting today.
Our research synthesized the challenges into four distinct pillars. First, there is a lack of scientific evidence for the impact of NBS specifically within the Indian context. Second, there is a lack of technical capacity and standards, resulting in insufficient protocols for NBS as compared to gray infrastructure. Third, there is not adequate funding for NBS, along with a lack of revenue models and incentives. And lastly, administrative barriers include governance silos and complex approvals. So let's break these down one by one. The first barrier is the lack of scientific evidence. While we have global data, we face a significant localized data gap. Planners struggle to select appropriate solutions because we don't have enough empirical research on how specific NBS perform in Indian hydrogeological conditions. For example, we know wetlands remove pollutants, but do we have the granular data to say exactly how much phosphorus a specific plant species removes in a constructed wetland in Bengaluru versus Delhi? Without this data, we cannot integrate NBS with gray infrastructure effectively. We also see a gap between individual small-scale interventions, like a rain garden, and collective ones, like a city park. As you can see in the table, even when we do have studies, the benefits vary widely. Look at permeable pavements. Runoff reduction ranges from 5% to 30%. Wetlands can reduce surface temperature by up to 11 degrees Celsius, but this depends entirely on local factors like humidity and hydrogeology. Because this data is often collected in confidential pilot studies, consultants and municipal engineers find it difficult to predict returns on investment, which scares off private capital. We need standardized, open data.
The second barrier is technical and bureaucratic. The lack of tendering protocols and institutionalized design standards. If a municipality wants to build a concrete stormwater drain, they have a manual. They have a predefined schedule of rates that tells them exactly how much the cement and labor would cost. But there is no equivalent for nature-based solutions. There are no standard designs. Consultants have to recreate drawings from scratch for every project. There are procurement grants. Basically, the government's schedule of rates often don't list sustainable materials or native plant species. There's also capacity gaps where our engineers and contractors are rarely trained in NBS executions, hence leading to failed designs. This leads to a default bias towards grey infrastructure simply because it's easier to tender and bid. The third barrier is administrative and institutional. Most of the government departments operate in silos. There's a lack of coordination between multiple ministries all working on similar goals but often independently. There are also project delays because there's delays in getting approvals for land use change or ecological restorations, and they require clearances from multiple agencies, leading to bottlenecks. Even lack of tendering SOPs for NBS leads to longer vetting processes. There's also data deficit. Policymakers often lack hyper-local data to make informed decisions. Then there are institutional barriers like how there are top-down planning. So basically the decision making is often top-down, ignoring the communities who actually live within the states. There is short-term policy making. Basically, the political cycles prefer quick results, visible concrete infrastructure over nature-based solution projects that might take years to mature. Even when we have regulations, enforcement is patchy. Violations often go unchecked, undermining the credibility of environmental protections.
Moving on to the third barrier, we face the challenge of inadequate funding and financial incentives. Currently, we have specific budget lines for traditional interventions like tree planting or lake rejuvenation, but we rarely have dedicated budgets for holistic urban NBS like bioswale, rain gardens, or green roofs. Because of this, implementers are forced to aggregate funding by navigating multiple national and state schemes. a process that creates a massive administrative burden and delays project timelines. Furthermore, public funding is almost exclusively focused on capital costs, which is building the infrastructure, while ignoring operation and maintenance. This is why we see so many pilot projects fail after a few years, as there is no budget line to maintain them. On the private side, the situation is equally challenging. Currently, the private sector contributes only 17% of the total funding for NBS in India. This number is low because the return on investment is unclear. Without data on financial performance, investors perceive these projects as high risk. We need to integrate NBS into environmental credit systems too. Currently, we have carbon credits, but they are designed for large forests, not small urban gardens or rain or biospheres.
Now, I know that's a daunting list of challenges, but here's the good news. We have identified concrete solutions. Let me outline the way forward across five key areas. The first is evidence and data. First, we need to establish robust protocols for localized data collection and monitoring across India's diverse hydrogeological landscapes. Every city is different, and we need data that reflects that reality. Second, we must develop standardized metrics and methodologies for measuring outcomes like carbon sequestration, flood mitigation, and biodiversity enhancement. This will help us make apples to apples comparisons. Third, we need to strengthen open data platforms so that researchers, practitioners, and policymakers can all access and contribute to a shared knowledge space. Next is capacity and standards. First, integrate NBS into curricula, from engineering colleges to urban planning institutes. We need the next generation of professionals to be trained in these solutions from day one. Second, formulate clear, context-specific technical design guidelines tailored to India's varied climates and ecosystems. Standardization doesn't mean one size fits all, it means having tested templates that can be adapted. Third, include NBS in procurement and tendering frameworks. Update the schedule of rates, create new categories for sustainable materials, and make it bureaucratically easy to choose nature-based solutions. Fourth, conduct training programs and certification courses for government officials, engineers, architects, and communities. This isn't just about technical skills, it's about building confidence and comfort with these approaches. Then we have finance and incentives. First, develop tools and frameworks to assess the risks and returns on NBS investments. Make the business case clear and compelling. Second, implement pilot projects with rigorous monitoring and evaluation. Success stories are our best advertisement. Third, foster blended finance models that combine public funding with private investment. No single source will be sufficient. We need creative partnerships. And fourth, provide financial incentives like grants, concessional finance, tax breaks, or performance-based payments. Make it economically attractive to choose nature-based solutions. Then we come to governance and policy. First, mandate collaboration across departments through joint task forces or working groups. Break down the silos. Second, update infrastructure policy to integrate NBS with great infrastructure so that it's not either or, it's both and. Third, incorporate NBS in regulatory and planning frameworks such as master plans, zoning regulations, and environmental impact assessments. Make them standard practice, not special exceptions. Fourth, and this is crucial, policies should mandate long-term maintenance and stewardship of NBS with clear funding and accountability mechanisms. NBS projects require long-term maintenance and stewardship to be effective. They're living systems, not static structures. And finally, public engagement. First, establish the process of participatory planning to ensure community engagement from the start. Second, hold nationwide awareness campaigns to help people know what NBS are and how they work. Third, showcase successful projects through the media, conferences, and awards. Celebrate wins and share lessons learned. And finally, involve citizens in monitoring and maintaining the NBS through citizen science initiatives. When people feel ownership, they become advocates. So let me conclude with this thought. We're at a critical juncture. Our cities are growing rapidly and facing many environmental challenges. We can continue down the path of conventional gray infrastructure alone, or we can embrace a hybrid approach that harnesses the power of nature alongside engineering. The barriers we've outlined today are real and significant, but they're not insurmountable. Every single problem has practical solutions. What we need now is political will, institutional commitment, and sustained collaboration among stakeholders: government, private sector, researchers, civil society, and communities. Nature-based solutions aren't just about being green or sustainable, though they are both those things. They're about building resilient cities that can withstand floods, cool themselves during heat waves, provide clean water, and offer healthy environments for people to live and thrive. The benefits are quantifiable, the need is urgent, and the time to act is now. So I encourage all of you to think about how you can contribute to mainstreaming NBS in your own roles, whether as policymakers, practitioners, researchers, or engaged citizens. Together, we can transform our urban landscapes from gray to green, from vulnerable to resilient, and from degraded to thriving. Thank you for your attention.